I wanted to talk to you today about a side project that I've been working on. And I've been really obsessed with this idea of how to really improve the command line experience for developers. And I was really thinking of this project that could be an extension to the GitLab CLI. So it could be like a sub command set within the GitLab CLI. And what it would really do is help to improve the developer experience as I'm developing code. So let's have a look at it. Start by having a look at what Duo explain does. So that's the first command in our list. So Duo explain really can help you understand the contents of any repository or file. So I'm basically in I'm in this really random repository which I've downloaded from the internet, and I can just ask Duo explain to explain what the main file does. So there's a app.py here, which I presume is the main file. So I can ask Duo to explain to me what this does. And as you can see, Duo's come up with a basic explanation of what it does. So it's told me that this is a Flask API that uses a SQLite database and retrieves book data. It has different routes. It also explains to me all the various functions that are there and explains to me what each of those functions does. So it's a pretty detailed explanation. Now, because this is a command line application, I can actually just pipe stuff to this. So I could say, I could take the same get adapted by, and I could say pipe that to Duo explain, and it would do the same thing. So it would explain to me the contents of the file, just because I'm piping, and because it's a CLI, I could do that. Now I can also, my favorite part is that you can also pipe errors to this. So if I say I've got this other program which throws an error, right? And so I can actually just pipe that error to Duo explain, and it'll actually tell me what the problem is and how to fix it. And there you go. It shows you the problem. It tells you how to fix it. It says, hey, there's a problem with line 2 in the divide function. You're doing a division by 0, which is not allowed. And so you need to fix that. And it actually gives you code relevant to this. Right? I want to show you a bit about what happens behind the scenes. So I'm going to pass the -d flag to Duo explain. And the -d just stands for debug and just helps show what's going on behind the scenes. So if you saw here, what's happening is we're sending the prompt, of course, with the error, but we're also giving Duo access to a bunch of tools. One of the tools is the read file tool, which tells Duo that, hey, you could read a file on the file system if you want help debugging, so you could tell me exactly what the problem is. And so what Duo did is it said, okay, I want to read this file because it saw that in the error message. And then it picked up that file and the contents. And then once it actually got the contents, it could give me a much more detailed fix, right? So it could tell me exactly what the problem is. It gives me the modified code and tells me exactly how to fix it. So that's Duo explain. Next thing I want to show you is Duo Review. Duo Review essentially reviews your code and does a thorough code review of your code, and also finds like security issues or issues with best practices. So I'm going to go back to the same repository and I'm going to say Duo Review, and I'm going to give it the same app.py file. And as you see, it's reviewed the code and it's come up with a number of things. For example, it said, hey, this is an unused import. It's looking at issues with templates. It's saying that, hey, you should use a template engine instead. It finds issues with like SQL injection. It said that, hey, here you should use a parameterized query instead. So it looks at both security and best practices. We can also ask Duo Review to actually just generate a patch file with the changes for us. To you about is Duo convert. So Duo convert essentially is one of my favorite functions. It essentially helps you convert one file from one language to another. So essentially what you need to tell it is which language you want to convert to. And Duo convert essentially converts that, and this is really useful for enterprises who are trying to do like legacy migration. For example, you got tons of like COBOL code or basic code that you want to convert to modern languages such as Java or Go or whatever else, right? And so Duo convert can help you do that. So here I've got a repository which is actually in COBOL, and I can ask Duo convert to actually convert this repository to another language. So I'm just going to say lang Python, convert this to Python, and I can I need to give it the file to convert. And of course, I can with Duo right now. It is configured to use any LLM, so you could configure it to use OpenAI or Vertex. And so all you need to do is really, and you could use multiple profiles which set like parameters like models, etc. So in this case, I want to use the GPT-4 model, so I can actually just provide that profile which is set up to use GPT-4, and that's what it's going to do. So eventually, the idea is that it just goes to model gateway, and then model gateway takes the most appropriate model to reply to Duo. Right now, we're just configuring the LLMs locally, and that's what's happening. So there you see that it's come up with the test.py file. So it's actually converted that code. We could actually run the code as well locally here, and it will actually run, right? So it converted that COBOL code, um, which is, I don't know, 44 lines into like a shorter, well, not so short, Python program, which it was able to do. Up is DioGenerate. I'm quite a lazy developer, and I can never remember things that go into common files. Like I can never remember what goes into makefile or Dockerfile or what's the syntax for a Kubernetes manifest. I could never remember that, and so DioGenerate is literally for that. So here I've downloaded another random Go project from the internet, and the first thing I notice is that it doesn't have a makefile. So I can ask Dio to do that for me. So I can say Dio generate and makefile. And what it'll do is it'll go ahead and speak to the LLM and figure out what's the makefile to be generated. So there you go. It's come up with the makefile. If you see, and it's created this build stage and the run stage. It knows it's a Go application, so it's gone ahead and done that. Now let's say the makefile all works. I'm ready to actually go ahead and deploy this to Kubernetes. So now I need a Docker file. So I need to build a Docker container. So I could just do that. So I could just say Dio generate Docker file. It's going to go ahead and generate a Docker file for me. So there's a Docker file. It knows it's a Go application. It's created a Docker file for me with the build stage, etc. Right, and then I can also ask it to generate for me or Kubernetes manifest. Now I don't remember the name of the manifest or what it should be called, but I could say I want a Kubernetes deployment and service manifest, right? So I could just give it those words, and it should go ahead and generate the manifest for me. And there you go. It's got this Kubernetes YAML. If you see, it's got this deployment manifest and the service manifest as well. So it's created both things for me very conveniently. And of course, if I want to create a GitLab CI YAML, and I don't remember whether it ends with a YML or a YAML, I could just say, hey, I want a GitLab CI YAML file. And then it should generate that for me as well. So we've got a GitLab CI YAML file. It's got stages. It knew it had to do a Docker build. It does a Go test and does a Kubernetes apply as well of that Kubernetes YAML. So that's Dio generate. Let's talk about unit tests next. So unit test lets you create unit tests essentially. Now I know as developers we're supposed to follow TDD and write a unit test first, but sometimes some of us don't. And so Duo unit tests can really help you quickly write unit tests for code that already exists. So I'm in a new repository here, and this repository actually is a brand new repository that I just downloaded. It has no unit tests, and I wanted to take an example which is not trivial to show you that it could just write a partial unit test for you. So I can actually got this little books code here, which basically is just a books API. And I could actually get it to Dio to write the unit test for me since there's no unit test for this repository. So I could say Dio unit test create, and then I'm going to run it with debug so that we can see what's going on. And then I'm just going to give the path. So that's package, APIs, books, v1, and just for that books, the books module, it's gonna go ahead and write unit test. I'm gonna go ahead and pause this video until it finishes, and I'll show you what all it did. Okay, so that completed. So we actually asked the assistant to go ahead and create us the test file. It tells us, it creates a test file and also tells us how to test that specific file which we are running, excuse me, which we're running now. And so we actually go ahead and run the test to make sure that it actually works. And that's really the power of this. So we can actually run the tests because this agent is running locally. We can actually check that the tests actually work. So I can actually run that command, and this is what the agent's doing in the background. It'll provide feedback to the LLM in case the tests don't work, and the LLM, you'll see, will keep changing the tests so that tweaking the tests so that they actually start working. And so here you go. We actually got running tests, which have worked, thanks to Duo. And the last thing I want to talk to you about today is GenDoc. So GenDoc essentially helps you generate docs for Duo. So essentially, it's really easy to generate docs. I've got this Python Flask application here, which just doesn't have any doc strings at all. So if you see missing doc strings for any of the functions, so nothing's really documented here. So all I need to do is say Duo gendocs and then point it to the file for which I want to generate docs for. And then it should just generate doc strings. So, and there we go. We can see that it's generated docs for each of our functions. So this is define the factory, define the home page, define the API routes and everything. So it's generated really detailed documents, doc strings, including, the return statements, the parameters, and everything. So that's it for Duo. I hope you like this demo. I would love some feedback. Would you use this tool? Do you think it's useful? Really, any feedback would be appreciated. Thank you for listening.